Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you, Russ.
Awesome. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
There we go. I was muted. Good morning. I am running the meeting for Mirta Becerra, who's the chair of Public Works today because she had another engagement. We are going to commence the Public Works meeting for the City of Missoula Public Works Committee. It is December 1st, 2021. We are still holding virtual meetings, and if you want to attend to give public comment, you can go to the city website and go to the meetings page, find the agenda for this meeting and click on the link. Otherwise, you can always email us also. The email address is council@ci.missoula.mt.us. So if we could do a roll call attendance, that would be great.
Anderson, Becerra,
She's absent.
Contos,
Here.
Harp, Hess,
Present.
Jones,
Present.
Merritt,
Present.
Ramos,
Here.
Cheryl,
Present.
Vasika,
Present.
Von Lossberg,
He is absent.
West.
Present.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. It looks like we have a quorum. We have minutes.
And I am here as well. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, sorry, thank you.
No worries.
Heather Harp is present. We have minutes from November 17th, 2021 to approve. Were there any changes to those minutes? Seeing none, those will stand approved, and I will call for public comment on items not on the agenda. We have no attendees from the public, so we will launch right into our one and only item today of business, which is the Missoula City Public Works and Specifications Manual update. And I believe we have Ross Mullenhauer here to present on this today.
Thank you, Gwen. Yes, my name is Ross Mullenhauer. I am the city engineering manager, and I am presenting the Public Works manual update to you all. And I appreciate you all attending since this is the only informational item and there's no action items for you today. But I'll launch into this. I have to say that the Public Works manual, a little background, this has been an effort from our entire Public Works staff over here, and we're pretty proud of it. So I'm the lucky person who gets to present it today, but this is an effort from all of us. So anyway, I'm going to launch into it now. Let me see if I can make sure my controls are working here. Okay, so the purpose of the Public Works Manual is this is our one-stop shop that provides a comprehensive document for developers, contractors, and engineers to look at, or council members if they're curious on what our rules are. Anyone who wants to can be looking at find our rules, and we're in the old days. I think in the past when we didn't have this manual, it could be pretty confusing as a consultant engineer personally to know where to find certain things and where to find things that was kind of buried in a mix of admin rules and code. So now we have a one-stop shop, and of course with any manual it requires updating. I threw this little joke in here. As a civil engineer, there's no such thing as a little mistake. A good picture of a bridge not lining up, and whereas we don't have any problems like that, I can say that our development engineering team the other day caught a mistake out at the Bill Grant area where two different subdivisions had two right of ways that were going to line up like this at the border, and they caught it. And so I'm happy to brag about that. That was a good catch on our part. But luckily we don't have any bridge mistakes like this going on. Here is where the manual is located. Lori Hart has been awesome working with us to make sure we stay organized and keeping this up on the website. So for anyone who is interested in diving into the details, that's where it is. How we got here, we first started working on this probably back in 2019, and by the end of 2020, we had our first version of the manual completed, and we brought it to the council, and it was approved. Since then, like I said, we've been working to refine the manual and continuously make it better. We keep having seeing more things we want to change in it, and so I think this is always going to be a living document. We're always going to be working to update it. We do as we get closer to this date where we're accepting it, we realized we needed to take this out for public comment, and so we blasted an email out to all the contractor engineers that we've ever worked with and let them know and ask for comments. And we did get a bunch of good comments back and responded to those. We did the same thing with our city internal agencies, like MRA and Parks have definitely commented on this manual. And that brings us to today, where we're presenting version 2.0 of this manual to council. This is just going to be adopted by administrative rule. So this is really just an informational item for you all. And the new rules will take effect on today's date. The way we apply this, we try to apply this as fairly as we think, as fairly as we can to the consultants. So basically it depends on when they submit their first round, what we call stage 3 plans to us. And that's when they submit that, that's when we will apply these new rules. So any project that's already been submitted, we're not going to change the rules on a midway. We're trying to be as fair as we can on that. Here's a quick overview. I'm going to go into depth on each of these chapters, but here's our table of contents. So I'm just going to blast through this. Chapter 1, this is an incomplete chapter. It's really a placeholder. A lot of this is kind of our general provisions that would be used on a CIP project. If the city was paying for a project, we always need certain sections, such as these sections. And a lot of this, we've been waiting. It was only the Montana, the state version of their manual, the Montana Public Works Standards and Specifications manual was only released in July of this year. So we've kind of been waiting for that. Now that's finally out. And I hope that we can put a chapter 1 general provisions together by next year. This is kind of the boring stuff that goes into every project manual and gets repeated every time, but it's not the fun technical stuff that the engineers like to use. This is more like the lawyerly stuff. Okay, so then chapter 2, this is the new chapter that we didn't have. So this is entirely new this year. And this is construction within the right of way. And when I say new, I mean it wasn't in last year's manual, but it has existed for a long time in admin rules and things like that. With that said, we did make a few changes. And I wanted to kind of hit on some of what I think are the larger changes for you guys. Sewer and water main upsizing. The city's always had these rules in effect about sewer main upsizing, that if you as a developer need an 8-inch main, but we as a city think that area would be better served with a 12-inch main, then we would pay the difference. That's what we call an upsizing project. And we didn't really have any rules for water because water was so new. So now we've got a one place for both sewer and water. And we clarified that we do pay for not just material differences, but labor differences, because it does take a lot more labor to install an 18-inch sewer pipe than an 8-inch sewer pipe, let's say. So that's where the rules around upsizing are. We also worked on a latecomers agreement with the attorney's office. And again, this is water and sewer. We're doing kind of different things in the past. I think sewer had something called a sewer rebate. So these are the rules on if you, as a developer at the end of the street, let's say, are putting in a new main and you pay for that main, but then somebody comes along next year and wants to connect to it. And so they're benefiting from the main that you just paid to install. Then the first developer who installed the main, if they wanted to, they could create a latecomers agreement. And we would, as a city, we would watch for those connections, and at time of connection, there'd be a formula that the original developer would get paid back from.
Great. Ross, we had a question.
Yeah, sorry. And I'm sorry if I go too fast, please interrupt,
Nope,
because I know
nope, that's
I'd
fine.
rather just make this conversational.
It's a lot of material, so I think as we go along,
Yeah.
it's okay for you to take questions.
You bet.
Heather?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, because there's no way I'm going to remember this.
No, it's fine. That's totally fine.
So sorry, my ear caught something that you mentioned going back to the sewer water main upsizing.
Mhm.
So, in the example you gave, you said if the city thought that the neighborhood or that area would be better served by a 12-inch versus an 8-inch, the city would pay for that additional cost upgrade or upsizing.
Yeah.
Would that also apply to the labor that would be required to do that? Did I?
Yes, you heard that correct. Yeah, we would pay for the material difference and the labor difference.
And the labor side. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Just wanted to make sure I heard that correctly.
Yep.
And I guess one other thing, is there space in this particular chapter that if the city later on decides that they want to incentivize permanent affordable housing, that there may be room that something along those lines, it could be addressed within this code?
Yeah, I think so. If it has to do with construction within the right of way, and how. Yeah, that's a big question, but there's always space in our manual. I guess, can you explain a little more about what you had in mind about how we would apply our affordable housing goals
Yeah, it might be
in this chapter?
another conversation, but in terms of as we try and figure out how do we address our housing crisis, is there within the code administratively, for that matter, too, that staff can say, "Ooh, this would be a great way that we can incentivize infill development in particular," and just rather than having it go all before council and something like that, can we do it administratively?
Yes, I'd say the answer to that is yes, that we can. Okay. And I think as staff, we definitely recognize the city's goals around affordable housing. And I think we are constantly kind of reviewing these rules in that with that framework in mind to try to think where do the rules make sense and where do they not make sense. And, I can think of some examples. I'll get into one with stormwater coming up here where we realize we don't need to require these stringent infiltration tests everywhere in the whole city, where we just only need them in some places. So let's make it easier and simpler and where we can. So I think we are kind of looking at comprehensively and trying to clean up our rules around those goals.
Okay, thanks, Ross.
Yeah.
Heidi had a question also, I think.
Yeah, so I was wondering about this, the upsizing cost sharing. Does that only apply to, I assume, property that's in the city limits? Because obviously both our sewer and water doesn't, serves areas outside of city limits. So
I think that would, I think that would apply outside of city limits.
And is there potential, I guess, for the county to step in? Is there a path for that right now? So say in East Missoula, which we just deferred annexation of for another decade, if we could see a sewer main, being larger to accommodate growth, is there a path to, loop the county in to do that cost sharing?
Yes. I don't know. I think that the reason this upsizing is here is because as a city, our philosophy is that development should pay for itself, right? Mm-hmm. But there are times when the city has, a similar objective to extend sewer out to a certain area, a larger area than just that small development. Maybe a developer is just thinking about his subdivision or his or her subdivision, and we're looking at the larger picture past that. And so if it met a county goal, then yeah, I think the county would need to be upsizing too. But since the utilities are city owned, I'm not sure necessarily when that would come in. We have our utility service area. I would say we wouldn't be extending anything past our utility service area without a bigger discussion.
Yeah, of course. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks for the questions. And yeah, please feel free to throw more at me. We also added some sections in here about utility locates to clear up what the city will locate and what it won't locate. We added some requirements about a pre-construction meeting. We realized that there's, meeting or development projects going on where they're building public infrastructure, and we were not being invited to the pre-construction meeting. So hopefully this addresses that, and we start getting invited so that we can represent our interests for those. We're already reviewing the plans, but a lot of the details happen at the pre-construction meeting too. Weekly construction documentation. Again, this is making sure that we get the information we need from projects. Maintenance bonds. This is kind of a big one. This is something that we've seen other cities using, and when we reached out to other cities, they all said that they're doing this. So it's basically the idea of a maintenance bond is it's a warranty bond. If a project is building public infrastructure, more than $50,000 worth. So if you're just building a fire hydrant, let's say we wouldn't require this, but if you're building a project of more than $50,000 of public infrastructure, then we would like to see a maintenance bond that would be in effect for the same amount of time as the warranty. And it just puts a little more teeth behind the city's warranty. Private utility mains in the right of way. This section is kind of a, you've probably seen the boring projects going on around town, and we didn't really have any rules very well established for our city policies around these telecom companies or communication companies or gas, sometimes electric, sometimes they were going on in the right of way. And as stewards of the right of way, we wanted to make sure our rules were clear. And this is particularly important because of, you probably heard in the newspapers about this company called TDS Telecom that is looking at coming to Missoula and could be pretty impactful in our right of ways. So we wanted to lay out the minimum depths, what our expectations are around trees and the boulevards. We worked with Parks Department to establish this. So I'd encourage anybody who has concerns about TDS and what the city will require to look at this chapter. Sorry, I see another hand up. Jordan, go for it. Sorry, I'm not the moderator.
No, that's all right. You caught me ahead there, but
Okay.
Go for it, Jordan.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Along those lines, I really value the preservation of tree planting sites, and I know that's a city goal, but can you speak a little bit more about can you talk a little bit more about that? And I guess I didn't even think about that with TDS coming in, but that would really be a shame if we lost a significant portion of tree planting sites or lost any mature trees as a result of that.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and that was something that Parks was concerned about. And to be honest, I didn't think about the wording around future tree planting sites. So you caught that, and Parks Department caught that, and so that is in there. That in the requirements that we're trying to protect existing trees as well as future tree planting sites. And so Parks Department wants to see the lines a minimum of 42 inches to be bored, a minimum of 42 inches, so they won't be impacting the roots of our existing trees or future tree planting sites. And then they wanted the lines to be either 1 foot away from the back of curb or 1 foot away from the sidewalk. But I think the idea is that you've got this boulevard space and you don't want your line right in the middle of that boulevard. You want it to be on the edges of the boulevard.
Right. That's really helpful. Thanks.
Yeah,
and I'm glad to hear that the future sites are considered in there.
Yeah, I will say too, we're meeting with the city of Billings. TDS has already started working in Billings. We're going to meet with their staff next week, Billings' staff next week, and try to see what we can learn from them as well. And trees are going to be on the agenda.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Lastly, in this section was easements, private utility service easements. I think our rules were a little confusing in the past about a minimum width you might need if you were crossing one property, crossing a private service line, a water service or a sewer service over someone else's property. So that's all better explained now in this section. Chapter 3 really has to do with our process, what we call the stage process, which is how we review public infrastructure. We made a few changes. We're trying to make this process a little easier to understand for developers. So we tried to create a roadmap. We're also in the midst of working on bringing this whole process into Excel, which I think will make it much more transparent for everyone involved. So that's kind of ongoing. That's more of an informational update for you guys. We worked with our GIS department to make sure we're getting consistent information. We added a new requirement for geotechnical reports for projects with steep slopes. And we tried to clean up the improvement agreement process. Improvement agreements are things that we require whenever a new lot is created to make sure the developer will add the improvements that they are promising, so that a lot doesn't get created without, a road or a water main. Okay, so I kind of spent, I'm not sure how much time we have, but probably not very much. So I'm going to kind of breeze through. I figured the rest of the stuff is kind of the technical chapters, technical chapter on water, sewer, storm, and transportation. So I'm going to try not to bore you with a lot of minutia, and instead just kind of hit on one bullet item from each of these slides. To kind of give you guys a taste of what we've been working on. This new requirement is about our flat rate water customers. That if you're a flat rate water customer or you have an inaccessible meter, like it's hidden in a place that our crews really can't get to, and you are doing a project, some kind of water, you pull a water service repair permit, then we're going to require a meter pit be installed at that time. You've already got the service trench open. It really just makes sense to start picking away at this issue of flat rate and inaccessible meters while we can.
And Ross, can I follow up on that with a little blurb here? I've had several emails in the last couple of weeks regarding the letter that went out from the private company that offers insurance for the water lines. Mm-hmm. And so I think they send it out once a year, and I always have several emails when people get it on the radar wanting to know if this is legitimate, and it is legitimate. The city vetted it. It's a legitimate company. It's up to people whether or not they want to insure their water lines, but they are responsible for those water lines from their house out to the main if it starts leaking. And I recently had a constituent who had a leak, had the insurance, got it fixed, worked well. So sorry, just like to insert that every time possible because it's an ongoing educational process.
Thank you, Gwen. Chapter 5 is our sanitary sewer system chapter. Again, I'm not going to go into all these details, but I will say that we finally got around to updating our city step manual. So, a lot of homes in the South Hills are on step systems. We still see some new step systems going in where the only place to serve them is a step main, but we are not encouraging any new step mains, let's say. Stormwater system, this is the example I kind of hit on earlier, right here, that we realized that we were requiring infiltration testing, which is cumbersome and time consuming. And it wasn't really needed if you're on the valley floor. So our staff kind of created a map of the area of the valley floor. And if you're in this valley floor where we know we've got good drainage, then we're not requiring this testing anymore. So we are kind of, like I said, we are looking at rules. Maybe this is a small example, but there's lots of other examples. If you gave me some time, I could probably come up with where we're looking at rules that say what can we do to streamline things and make things make more sense, and not be overly strict and require things when they're not needed. Chapter 7. Let me know if I'm going too fast for anybody. Chapter 7 is our transportation system. This is probably the one I wanted to hit on about chip sealing. We had this rule here in the manual last year, but I don't think it's actually been enforced, and it was a little confusing. So we've tried to clean it up. And the idea here is that, again, development should pay for itself. So if you are building a new arterial or collector road, the city is going to require that it be chip sealed. So rather than, them just laying out the asphalt and then Brian's crew is coming along afterwards and chip sealing it, we're going to put that expense on the developer, that we think it should be chip sealed. And the reason we're limiting it to collector roads and arterials is that a lot of times these new developments will go in and install the local roads, the residential roads, but then the builders and homeowners will come in and they can do some damage while they're building the houses and everything. So we didn't think it made sense to chip seal a brand new street and then have that chip sealing get torn up right away. So we're just trying this out on arterials and collectors for now. We might revisit this in the future. Chapter 8, erosion control. There really wasn't any major changes here. This is a list of standard drawings. I know this text is kind of laughable that you're not gonna be able to see it all, but I just wanted to kind of point out the scale. The city does have a whole lot of standard drawings for all of our chapters, and we have been making changes to those. And if engineers or contractors are curious, they can go out there and look at this list. But I just wanted to bring it up to everyone's attention.
Great.
Yep. So what's next? The new version, like I said, the new version of this manual will be adopted by administrative rule on this date. The old admin rules will be, which, we're trying not to have things stated in two places. So we're going to try to clean things up on the city's website and remove those admin rules. Some of the same might need to be done for the municipal code. So I know there's a larger kind of code reform effort going on with the city, and we're going to work with them and try to clean up some sections so we're not stating things twice. And here's the website again. And then we'll get busy working on next year's update, because like I said, it's a living document. So that's my presentation. I'm happy to take any more questions.
Great. Thank you, Ross. And I know you guys are always full up busy to begin with, and then to do this kind of work on top of it just takes extra effort and energy, but totally worth it in the long run. Are there any questions from anyone else on council? Julie Merritt.
I just want to say thanks to Russ and all the staff who worked on this. It's this may seem like nitpicking details to a lot of folks, but it makes a big difference, I think, in establishing clarity for developers, having expectations that are all out there. And then if we have someone who comes in with applications that don't meet those expectations, it's kind of on them because we've laid it all out there and made it very transparent. And I know it was a lot of work to get to this point. And I also know that you guys have done a lot of work with the folks in the private sector that you work with all the times on these things. And I really appreciate that effort. Good job.
Thank you, Julie.
Heather?
Yeah, Ross, kudos to you and your team for tackling this project, which is at least a year in length already. And I know there's more work to be done, but as Julie mentioned, for those who are in the construction industry, when you have a lot of time that is spent trying to understand complicated code, I think this new revision really helps to simplify things and hopefully can make everyone's life a little bit easier, and we can get the projects done faster as a result of that. And I cannot express how grateful I am that you and your team reached out to the private sector to make sure that you could get their feedback and input in the process, not after it's all said and done. I cannot express how important that public-private partnership really is, even when it comes down to a public works manual.
Thank you, Heather.
Great, thank you. anyone else? I would call for public comment, but we don't have anyone in attending, the attendees today. Any other council with questions or comments? Well, Ross, we really appreciate you coming in today and all of the work that has gone into this. And it's good for the community, good for you guys. So it's a heavy lift.
Thanks, Gwen. And I wanted to say, this might be my last time presenting to all the people who are signing off after this year. I wanted to say what a pleasure it's been working with you all, and thanks for your service.
Thanks, Ross.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ross. Take care.
Yeah.
Thanks. All righty. Thank you.
Yeah.
That is the end of our agenda for today, and we will stand adjourned.